Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Adult Chair on RashPixel.fm. I'm Pete Wright, and right over there is Michelle Chalfant.
Right next to you in Tennessee.
Right next to me on our sweet planet we love called Earth. Hey,
Yes.
This episode. Well, first I do have an announcement before we dig into anything big. We have a scheduling announcement, and for those who listen to the show every week, we sure appreciate it. One of the things we noticed is that even those people who listen every single week don't listen in July. Looking at our
Everyone's
stats,
on vacation in July.
they do it. You know what they aren't doing? Listening to us.
Right.
So we have decided to also take a vacation in the month of July. So for 4 weeks in the month of July, we are not going to be releasing new episodes. We're going to find the ones that we love over the last several years, and we'll drop 4 of our very favorites each week in the month of July. So just be ready. July is a rebroadcast month. We sure appreciate it. Don't unsubscribe. We're still here. We're just taking some vacation and ourselves and enjoying the sun somewhere while we have it. Before it starts raining in Portland again, which should be any minute. So that's it. That's our public service announcement coming up in July. We do have one more episode in June coming up, and it's going to be a really, really good one. We've got Katie Hendricks joining us in the show to talk about what to do when your marriage gets boring. Oh, dear.
It's going to be a great one.
It's going to be great. So that'll
She's
be our
great.
last episode in June, and yeah, she's terrific. It's going to be a fun conversation there with Katie Hendricks. So that's it. And then July off, and then we'll be back in August. And so, we're going to be talking about codependency in relationships. And we've had this topic on the show before, which I will put some links in the show notes to past episodes that we've done. This time it comes as a question out of our closed group on Facebook. I'm very excited to take that on. And really, again, that closed group on Facebook is just such a rich experience. So definitely go check that out. Before we get started, head over to theadultchair.com to learn more about the show. You can subscribe for free by signing up to our mailing list or find us anywhere the finer podcasts are served. You can join the conversation on Facebook or Twitter and our private Facebook group. And again, don't forget, if you find something from Michelle out of these podcasts suits you, has changed the way you live, the way you see the world, please consider paying it forward with a 5-star review in Apple Podcasts. It absolutely helps others find support in their time of need. Okay.
Yes.
Out of the Facebook out of the Facebook group comes the question, Michelle, ending
Yes.
codependency in relationships. Where would you like to start?
And it wasn't directly to me, but it was one that I was in conversation. I got in the conversation and responded to someone that actually brought that up in the closed group. And it just made me think that this question comes up a lot in private sessions and in other realms of friendships and family and all this kind of thing. But so when we're in a relationship with a codependent, someone that is codependent, or if we are codependent, how do we get out of that relationship? And it's so hard because we feel like we're hurting the other person. So I thought it would be a good place to start out with what is, again, and I know this is a little bit of a review because we've talked about this a couple other times, but what is codependency? What is it? So here is, I pulled up something, it's on Everyday Health, and it's by Jonathan Becker. This is how he defines it, and I liked it a lot. It says, codependency can be defined as any relationship in which two people become so invested in each other that they can't function independently anymore. Again, I liked that show that we did. It might have been, Pete, 2 years ago? And it was, I'm okay if you're okay. I think that kind of sums it up in a nutshell. Like, if I'm a codependent person, I'm okay emotionally speaking, only if you're okay. And if you're not okay, I'm thrown. Some other things that happen would be, or other traits, I should say, would be, we might have difficulty in making decisions. We don't know what we're feeling because we're putting all of our energy on someone else. So we might have difficulty in communicating in relationships, or we want approval from other people versus ourselves. We don't know what our reality is. So we have to learn when we're codependent to own our own reality and not the reality of someone else and make that our reality. We sometimes don't lack trust in ourselves, have issues with self-esteem. We fear we're going to be abandoned. I'm trying to think of some other good things. Unhealthy dependence on relationships, even at our own cost. So we kind of lose ourselves. An exaggerated sense of responsibility for actions of others.
I always think about E.T. when I think about codependence.
You do?
I
Why
do.
is that?
Because that's like the biggest heart-wrenching part of E.T. When Elliot gets sick, E.T. gets sick. They get sick together and they almost die. Right. Like it is so, and you know, the jury's out on whether or not E.T. was just getting sick so he could make Elliot healthy. And when Elliot got better, E.T. died. That's the result of codependence. E.T. died.
Yeah. I'm not laughing at that because that was such a cute little movie.
It was a great movie.
That's a great, that is great because that's a great analogy actually, because, like we are so connected to this other person or other people, I should say, in our lives that we have a hard time functioning in our own reality and our own life without them, without caretaking someone else. So our attention is outside of ourselves. Mm-hmm. And we learn this. I mean, this could happen from, I was reading something a while ago and it said, as teenagers or even as children, when we have to caretake our parents in some way, this is when it gets set up. It goes way back in time. And we then when we feel responsible, which by the way, as children, we just do, we want our mommy and daddy to be happy. So if they're not happy, we make it our job to get in there and try to make them happy. And if our parents are unhealthy, then they allow it.
Yeah.
So for example, I know I've used this before, and I want to preface this. I adored my parents. I love my mom. My father, unfortunately, has passed away, but loved my parents. This is not to slam anybody. This is not to blame. I had to learn that I was codependent, and it was the most helpful thing for me. I don't like labels, and I've said that too, but I like having an understanding of how and why I'm acting and doing what I'm doing. And that's when a definition comes in handy, but then you throw the label away and you don't identify yourself as that label. Does that make sense?
Totally.
Because I don't like when people... Yeah, when we over-identify with the label, then we become that. So I don't want anyone to say, I am codependent. No, you have codependency traits. Doesn't even matter why, where it came from, who cares? But learn what codependency is all about. So then you learn when you're acting in that way and make another choice. We do that from our adult.
It's all about the bucket of behaviors.
Yes. We wake up to the slumber that we are in, to the sleep that we're in, and we go from reacting to other people to empowering ourselves and saying, hold on, I have choices. I'm uncomfortable, but I'm going to choose in a new way right now. We do that from our adult. So learn what it means and see if you identify with this. And if you do, then you can make new choices. And for God's sake, this makes me mad because I have a lot of teenage kids and I relate to them so much because this is how my mom and I related when I was growing up. Even I think the seeds were planted when I was around age 6. My parents had an unhealthy marriage in that my dad was an identical twin. I know everyone's heard this story many times. I'm telling it again for the new people. And he was very enmeshed with his brother, his identical twin brother, and his mom is this Italian family. So everyone's enmeshed. And what enmeshed means, it means I don't know where my boundaries stop and start. So I feel like you're part of me. That's what I saw with my dad and his twin. That's what I saw with my dad and his mom. So guess what I did with my mom, who felt like a third wheel when it came to my dad. She would cry, and I was really young, and I'd go and take care of her. Like, why are you crying, mommy? Let me help you, mommy. And she didn't lay all of her stuff on me intentionally by any means. She loved me.
Sure.
But she had no one else to turn to. So eventually, by the time I'm 12 years old, my mom and I are starting to talk about like what a jerk my father's twin was. So, and why is he treating you like that? And he's so mean. And why isn't dad standing up for you? I mean, all of this dysfunction, but my mom had no one else to turn to. So I'm not saying that it's okay, but I understand because I was the recipient of that. It was not okay, but I understand. Like my mom didn't have anybody. She didn't tell everyone what was going on, but I was there. I was the only kid walking around. So
yeah.
she and I became very enmeshed, very codependent. I felt very, very responsible for her and taking care of her emotionally speaking. And she leaned heavily on me. So she was only 21 years older than me. So we were, and I hear this now and I want to scream when people come in and say, well, my mom and I are best friends. I'm like, whoa, red flag, red flag.
Now, yeah, let's talk more about that though, because I mean, that's such an easy thing to say. And you feel that's kind of how we define what maybe we think is a good and healthy relationship where best friend doesn't fly.
There's a fine line. I think as parents, we don't want to cross that line of what's called emotional incest, which is when we are laying too much on our child. It's emotional incest. I don't want to know about the sex life you're having with my father. I don't want to know that you hate my dad. I don't want to know. And my mom didn't. I'm just using this in general. I don't want to know all the crap that you're having going on in your marriage. I don't want to know it because you know what? It's my dad and I still love my dad. As kids, we love our parents no matter what. So I've worked with many, many people that were physically abused by one of their parents for like 10 years, 20 years, and they still always loved that parent, even though they were being abused. They still are longing for that love. So I have a lot of Vanderbilt and Belmont students, and they come in and it's so much of the same thing. Yes, a lot of them have anxiety or they're overwhelmed from school, but a lot of them talk about the overwhelm that they have with their parents. So it might be that their parents are going through a divorce. It might mean that their parents are just in an unhappy marriage. But the parents, when we as parents lay our frustration about our husband or wife on our kids, it is so overwhelming for them. I hear it all the time. And this is what creates codependency in these kids. It overwhelms a kid. So when I hear again, well, my mom is my best friend, I'm like, well, what does that mean exactly? Like, do you go shopping once a week? Do you get your nails done? It's more about what are you disclosing to your daughter or your son? How much are you expecting your son or your daughter to take care of you, to help you to feel better, to how much are you using them like as a gas tank? Like if you're a car and you're on empty, do you use your kid as gas if you're in a car that's on empty? Like that's where it becomes a dysfunctional relationship and codependent. When a parent leans heavily on the child, it's dysfunctional and it can create codependency. Mm-hmm. It's overwhelming for any kid to take on their parents' divorce, their parents' issues, their parent, my mom, because my dad would choose to spend time. He wanted us all together all the time. But the uncle, he was a narcissist. He was an angry guy. We didn't want him around. But my dad tried to pull him in all the time. So he would go on the weekends and spend time with the uncle. So my mom would then complain to me that my dad is not spending time with her. So guess what? I would take my mom with my boyfriend and I out to the movies, out to dinner. Like,
oh my God, you are kidding me.
No.
Oh
but
my
if
goodness.
I didn't, she would sit home alone and she'd be so upset because my dad's not with her. So I would take her with me.
Oh my goodness.
Sister
Michelle.
almost, I know. I'm telling you, I know codependency. Let me tell you what, right? I've done my work. I can see it and spot it a mile away. But it took a lot for me to work through that. It was hard. I would take her out to dinner with my boyfriend. I was like, oh yeah, ask your mom. She's fun. And then my sister almost did not go to college away from home because I was 6 years old. I am 6 years older. She was so afraid to leave my mom alone because she said she's going to be so upset if I'm not there to take her out and do things because dad's always with the uncle. So my sister almost didn't even go away to college. She wanted to go to a local college for my mom. I don't even know if my mom knows that. So I get when we are in these codependent relationships, we have to learn how to separate out. And it's hard because when we are in that unconscious state of living in the adolescent chair, that's where the ego sits, but that's unconscious. In other words, we are reacting to everything. So in other words, if my mom is upset, I'm going to go fix it. If my mom is having a bad day and upset with my dad, I'm going to go, or upset about anything, upset about her sister or brother or whomever, I feel like as the kid that is codependent, even as an adult, by the way, I've got to ride in and save her because she's upset.
Okay.
So here's how we break up with a codependent. Even if I'm codependent and my mom, like for me, it was my mom and myself. And then what happens is we learn as we're growing up in that environment that that's how we are in the world. That's just who I am. In other words, I confuse need with love. If my mom needs me, I was confused. That to me felt love, like she was loving me. And it's flip-flopped in the brain. So, and I think I used this on another show. I'm going to say it again because it was powerful for some people. When I first met my husband, he kept saying, I want to marry you. I love you. I love you. I love you. I'm like, and he's very independent. Okay. And I remember I can see myself looking at him 21 years ago now. And I said, why do you want to marry me? You don't even need me.
Oh, dear.
And he said, I remember saying that. I looked right at him. I go, you don't even need me. And he goes, what are you talking about? I said, you don't need me for anything. You're so independent. He goes, but I love you. You're great. You're fun. And he listed all the reasons. I'm like, but you don't need me.
Yeah.
And he said, yeah, I don't. And I could not comprehend why you'd want to be with me if you didn't need me. And when we're codependent, it's this like very reactionary life that we live. So we automatically go into taking care of people without even knowing that we're doing it. I did not know I was caretaking everybody. It was just how I lived. So, and I used this example before, I think I'm going to use it again. And I had a friend, I remember she called me and she says, I got to take my car. I said, hey, what are you doing today? She goes, I'm going to run my car over to the shop. Without even having a split second thought or a pause, my response was, oh, you're going to drop your car off? What time do you want me to come and pick you up from the shop? Ooh. I didn't even wait for her to say like, oh, would you be able to pick me up? Or I didn't say, would you like it's like such an automatic. So one of those traits that I had mentioned, what did I say? Oh, have an exaggerated sense of responsibility for the actions of others. It's like, it's my job to take care of the entire world. That is my program from childhood because that's what I did in my own family. I was marriage counselor for my parents. My dad would pull me aside and say, help me with your mother. My mom would pull me aside and say, what do I do about your father? I remember when I moved away, I lived in Richmond. I was getting my master's and they'd call me. And this is when we had home phones and they were each on a home phone and I'm on my phone in my apartment and they're both on the phone yelling about each other and crying. And I'm like 23 or 4 years old trying to marriage counsel these people. So it's like, yeah. And here's the thing, we can't fix anybody. We can't fix anybody. So how do we break up? So this was my journey. These are also just great things that we do for ourselves to pull away from that person that we are really so codependent with, or the people or the environment. Number one, I have to say, tell people that you're really close to, that you're working on this and that you need help. So please point it out. And when you're in a reactionary state from the codependency, ask your friends, your family, people that are close to you to point it out in a loving way. So I first said that to all my friends. I'm like, please help me because I can't see it because it's so programmed in, like, this is who I am. So people would say to me and they'd chuckle with it and be like, you're being codependent. Like, you don't need to pick me up from the car place. And that was what my friend did, actually. She laughed at me. And I said, why are you laughing when I said I was going to pick you up? She says, because I didn't even ask.
Yeah. So good.
And I was like, damn it. I said, well, thank you for sharing that because I didn't even catch it. But I had fun with it. There was no beating up on myself. Yeah. Like, oh my God, how am I ever going to get out of this? I was like, oh shit, I missed that one. So let me go ahead and catch it. But it's like we need people to help us to see when we're doing it because it's so automatic. So, okay, here's another step. Step one, actually. The first step would be to tell people that you really love to help you to catch it and own your own reality and learn how to stay connected to yourself and stop taking care of everybody else. But learn how to stay really grounded. And that, again, is helpful. And realizing when someone is leaning too heavily. So we're going to raise our awareness to, gosh, so-and-so is really asking me a lot and sucking energy from me. And manipulating me, or becoming such a victim, and they can't get out of their own way, and there's nothing I can do. And I mean, so we got to raise our awareness around that. And so getting grounded in ourselves is really helpful. The second thing is we have to remember we're going to pull the Band-Aid off of this codependency with this other person or other people. We got to do it really slowly. And I know it hurts when you rip it off quickly, and it hurts even more sometimes when you do it slowly, but I mean, teeny tiny steps to start pulling away. So
that's counterintuitive, right? Because we have so enculturated this experience of, oh, you got to do it fast. Just pull off the Band-Aid really fast.
Not with codependency, because if you're dealing with someone that's really in a victim place, or like the girl that's in our closed group, that's what she was saying. She said, I don't know, my mom has nobody. She's so lonely, and she calls me every day and tells me how lonely she is, and I don't know how to get out of it. And I'm going to hurt her. And as a codependency, that's why I was so afraid with my own mom. I thought, oh my God, how will I ever pull away from my own mom? This is my mom. I love her. And if I'm not talking to her 10 times a day, she's going to be in pain. So that's why it's pulling the Band-Aid off really slowly. So if you talk to your person or someone like a mom or whomever, let's say 5 times a day, cut it back to once a day or twice a day. And start then pulling it back to once a day, and then every other day. So, and you say things like, I'm so sorry I have this new job, I just can't talk at work. Or, oh, I'm so sorry make up something, but you want to start backing away, and that's taking care of you, which is what needs to happen. It doesn't help anyone when we are really, again, giving them the gas. We become the gasoline to their car that's running on empty. They can go find gas at a different gas station, not you anymore. So, because we can't fix anybody. That's really, really important to remember. My sister and I would sit down with my mom for years and years, and like at least 15 to 20 years. Mom, you're really unhappy with Dad. And we love both of them. I didn't want them to get a divorce at all. But we'd say to her, you need to leave. You're so unhappy. It was like, and we used to say, it's like beating a dead horse. She's not going to ever change. Sure. If you're that unhappy, get out. If you're that happy, get out. And she wouldn't until she was ready. And then unfortunately, my father passed away. But people aren't going to change until they're ready to change. So we as codependents think we can fix them. We can help them. All of these things. It doesn't work. It doesn't work.
Okay.
So we got to back off. Stop fixing people.
But Doc, it hurts when I do this. Stop doing that. That's the ultimate lesson of codependence.
It is.
Okay. What else?
Okay. One of the codependency is an addiction. Okay. So we don't want to feel our feelings. Instead, we go into fix-it mode with these other people. We take care of. Instead of feeling our feelings, that's what we do. So in order to help heal this addiction, we want to feel our emotions. So when we distance ourselves from the person that we are in that dysfunctional relationship with, we're going to have feelings. We're going to have grief and pain and all these other things that come up. Allow them to come through and pass through. Because what happens is the feelings are rising up within us, and then the adolescent jumps in and tries to fix it. Mm-hmm. But the feelings are always coming first. So with codependency, the key is, what the heck are you feeling? Get inside. What's going on? So here's something that could very well come up, is that when we start to pull away from these people that we're in these codependent relationships with, they don't like it.
Oh, yeah, because their system is being tested. Their worldview is being tested.
Exactly. They're like, what do you mean? You're the gasoline for my car. What are you talking about? Totally. I need the gasoline, right? So we're their source. It's like we are giving them it's dysfunctional again. So for me, I again started pulling back and focusing on myself, and that's loving. That's not selfish. That's self-loving. To pull back and start taking care of myself, which means I'm going to own my reality. I'm going to feel my own feelings, and I'm going to start paying attention to what's going on inside of me. So am I calling my mother or my friend or whomever because I'm feeling like I need to fix somebody, or I need to check in on them, or I'm being the gasoline for someone else, or, we got to get clear, and we can't do that if I'm focusing outside of myself all the time. I've got to focus on the inside. So when I first started pulling away from the it's not that I pulled away from my mom. I started recognizing the dysfunction, and I didn't act when my codependency was saying, call your mom. You haven't talked to her. You've only talked to her 3 times a day. I started going, you know what? I'm going to sit in my anxiety of not calling her. I'm going to sit in that.
Yeah.
You see? So we have to feel what's going on. But what happens is then the other person, my mom started saying, why haven't you called me? You've only called me a few times today. And I said, yeah, I'm just kind of busy. So they don't like it. You know, when I started telling friends and family to go get their own therapist and stop using me, they don't like it. What do you mean? I remember my mom said, well, you're my therapist. And I said, no, not anymore. Because I realize you can't hear from me. You have to go find somebody that doesn't know you. And that's how you're going to heal your own stuff. I can't do it for you anymore. And we got to lay these boundaries and stay strong within ourselves. But yeah, so it's very, very, again, this is why it's a Band-Aid and we're taking it off slowly. Some days it might be a little bit quicker and then we go back to slow again. We're easing our way out. And the other metaphor is it's like we're swimming with these people in the water and they're using us as a life jacket. So we have to pull the life jacket away because what these people forget is that they can swim on their own. They can swim.
Yeah.
So they need to stop using us as a life jacket.
But there are sharks, they say. There are sharks. And you say, well,
then
stop
they're going to learn how to
panicking.
swim.
Yeah. If you
then
stop panicking, the sharks will leave.
Really, really fast.
Yes.
Exactly.
This is such a great metaphor.
Yes. But here's the thing. When we pull away, they may suffer. They may look like they're drowning in the water, and you might be tempted to throw them the life jacket. But I promise you they can swim. And when they start to swim, they may not do the beautiful crawl like Michael Phelps would do in the Olympics. They may do a doggy paddle and look like they're going under the water at some point. But that's healthy for them. That's healing for them. They will find their way. They might doggy paddle away. They might do a side stroke. They might not do the most beautiful stroke when they're swimming away. But they have to learn how to swim on their own without you being the life jacket.
That's love that.
Yeah.
That's
what's key.
That is key. That is the metaphor I'm going to keep in my head. And you know what's funny? Your final comment on this. I feel like this is a lifelong journey. When you say, don't use the words, I am a codependent, rather instead, this is a bucket of behaviors, or this is a highway that I'm on and I keep drifting into that lane, the codependent lane. This for me, like I resonate with what you're saying here, like with describing the symptoms, what it is when you feel like someone else's emotional experience is contagious in that way. Like you're describing me. This is a lifelong thing to practice being conscious of.
Definitely, without a doubt. And and now my kids, I'll ask my 16-year-old son, I'll be like, is that, this is my phrase all the time. I'm like, is that caring or codependent? So now,
I love that your kids are doing this. God, that's great.
Oh yeah. I want everybody to know. I'm like, I'm not embarrassed by it. I'm like, I don't care. I want to, again, the other word I don't like is healing, because healing implies that I'm broken. I'm not broken. I'm just self-realizing here. So I'm just realizing when I'm being codependent. So my son will jokingly lay that on me. Mom, you're being codependent. I'm like, but now that I'm so much stronger in my sense of self because I pay attention to myself, my emotions, I can look at him and go, no, that's me that is me being caring. I'm not being codependent. He's like, all right, you're right.
Oh, that's so good. That's delicious.
Yeah. It's funny.
Very good stuff. Thank you so much for this episode. Again, we mentioned a couple of episodes that we've done in the past, particularly episode 11. Oh my goodness, 11.
11?
A long time. That was the I'm okay if you're okay episode. It has been a long time since we dove into it at this level. So please check that out. Also, our conversation with Ross Rosenberg is in the show notes as well. So
I think Ross Rosenberg, excuse me, I just want to say this. I think he talked about, which was great. So that first one that I did, episode 11, was on straight up codependency.
Yes.
And this is where I probably used similar examples. Ross talked about codependency with narcissism.
Yes.
So that was a great one too. So definitely listen to both of those.
truly.
If you want more info on this.
Yeah, these are some great resources. They are evergreen. So check those out. Thank you so much, Michelle Chalfant. It is, as always, a treat to be podcasting with you. And thank you, everybody, for downloading and listening to this episode. We sure appreciate your time and your attention in doing so. And we will catch you next week right here, seated firmly in the adult chair.